Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us in this breakout session for sociology and criminal justice to have this discussion around critical race theory, reframing the narrative. I'm Dr. Katya Salmi, and I teach sociology at Montgomery College on the Rockville campus. And today I am here with Professor Robinson, who's going to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ginger Robinson. I'm a criminal justice professor. I teach on the Rockville and the Tacoma Park Silver Spring campuses. I also coordinate the program on those campuses, and I'm really excited that you all are here to join us today. Dr. Newton?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dr. Nancy Newton. I am the Grants and Sponsored Programs Manager at Montgomery College. My area of passion and expertise is criminal justice, working with our most vulnerable learners, working at the maximum security jail in Montgomery County.
Great, thank you for those introductions. So before we start, I wanted to review the community agreement that you may have heard in the opening session, in the main session, but we want you to kind of participate in this discussion with these ideas in mind. So first, we would like us to be open and flexible. If you have something to contribute, please feel free to share it with us, the facilitators, or in the chat. We encourage you to take risks and to ask, the big question of why, and kind of come to this discussion thinking critically. We want us all to take responsibility for our own learning, participation, comfort, and input. And we want to listen to understand, not just to be reactive. We hope that everyone will be open-minded, and we hope that everyone forgives and apologizes. Hopefully we won't be taking these discussions personally. Your participation in this breakout room is by choice. So I'm gonna hand it over to Professor Robinson now.
Sure. So, like Dr. Salmi said, we will begin by just giving a very brief overview of a couple of the applications of critical race theory to our disciplines, sociology and criminal justice. And then we will turn off the recording and we'll open things up for a more inclusive dialogue with all of you. So critical race theory is an approach that really lends itself well to both sociology and criminal justice. So sociology is the study of society, its institutions, and how these relate to and shape groups and individual behaviors. And criminal justice refers to the institutions, the government agencies that are involved with how our society deals with what is deemed to be criminal behavior. And there can be overlap between both disciplines. And we see that, for example, when we look at the study of crime and deviance in sociology. If we look at the legal foundations of critical race theory as an exploration of how race continued to play a significant role in our society's legal institutions, even after the civil rights movement of the 1960s, its importance and relevance to criminal justice as a discipline is expansive. And taking a critical race lens to the criminal justice system, it means to understand, to unpack how crime and race have long intersected throughout American history. We see examples of that intersection in the seminal work by Michelle Alexander in The New Jim Crow, or the documentary 13th by Ava DuVernay, both of which establish these crucial areas in which race contributes to disparate outcomes in the criminal justice system, like mandatory minimum sentences and mass incarceration. And this is particularly true for Black, Indigenous, and other people of color.
Within the discipline of sociology, one big area in which we kind of see the link with critical race theory is how race is socially constructed. And that is a primary tenet of CRT. So we look at race as not a biological reality, but as an idea that was socially constructed at a very specific point in time. For a very long time, our world has operated along this idea that race is very much biological and that it is determined for everyone in this natural way. And this has led to these assumed hierarchies based around biology that rank different races along the spectrum of which race is better or not. The idea of biological races was really important for establishing dominance over certain groups and justifying practices such as slavery, such as colonialism, and the treatment of different groups like Native Americans or Black people in the United States over time. However, from a scientific standpoint, the idea of race as a biological reality has been debunked. It's been proven that it's not true. And so, what does that mean for the idea of race? It doesn't mean that race doesn't matter because we know that in the everyday lives of people, it very much matters. But a critical race perspective in sociology will try to identify and understand the ways in which the socially constructed idea of race continues to impact our social institutions and also impacts individuals throughout society. On a macro level, it will look at patterns and dynamics that influence society as a whole. And on a smaller micro level, it will examine how individuals think about race through their everyday interactions.
In 2020, you see, right, those applications of critical race theory to our disciplines, but the relevance of critical race theory to our fields was further evidenced in 2020 during the protests in support of Black lives after the murder of George Floyd at the hands of the police, and through Say Her Name, right? Another social movement that brings attention to the intersectional importance of understanding how race, gender, and the criminal justice system interconnect by focusing on the deaths of Black women and their interactions with the criminal justice system. Women like Sandra Bland and Breonna Taylor. And these protests and social movements pushed for justice and reform of police institutions, but also for rethinking our societal approach to dealing with crime.
And then again, if we want to think about sociologically how we can think about these movements and these protests that happened in 2020, we can think about social change and how race plays a role in, and critically thinking about race plays a role in making social change happen. And then we can also think about crime and deviance. From that perspective, we can try to unpack and understand what becomes labeled as deviant or criminal and how that contributes to societal ideas of race. Who gets labeled a criminal and who gets labeled as more peaceful or law abiding. So these ideas of race can be very powerful and influence our social institutions, like the criminal justice system, but also education, government, politics, health, the economy, to name just a few.
Right. So now I will stop recording so we can engage in some discussion.